Welcome back to a long-delayed episode of The Ancient Art of Modern Warfare. I'm Chris Mayer, retired U.S. Cavalry Colonel and, among other things, former instructor for the U.S. Army's Command and General Staff College. From this point on, instead of explaining enduring principles of war and peace, I will describe how I perceive those principles to apply to current conflicts. This means that, even more than in previous episodes, what I say represents only my own thoughts and not those of any organization I am or have ever been associated with. Some of what I say may be completely opposed to the official position of some of these organizations. Since, in any strategy, we should begin with the end in mind, I'm going to build on the previous episode on the challenge of peace, particularly in episodes 93 through 95. Almost immediately after he was elected, Pope Leo XIV called for just and sustainable peace in Ukraine. Not only is this concept of a just and sustainable peace directly in line with those previous peace episodes I just mentioned, it was also a welcome change from Pope Francis's call for Ukraine to, in his words, raise the white flag. The challenge will be to determine what justice is in this context and how to make it sustainable. Before that, however, we must recall that war is a conflict between, or sometimes among, organized political entities. These entities are sometimes referred to as nations, states, or countries. These terms, however, are not synonymous with one another. Not understanding the differences among these terms can lead to confusion and even trickery among the diplomats who are trying to negotiate for a peace, especially a peace that aims to achieve on the peace table that which they could not achieve by war. So I'm going to start by defining these three terms, and later I'll explain how misunderstanding them can lead to false perspectives on peace. The easiest of these three terms is country, so I'll begin there. The melody of the British royal anthem, God Save the King, is truly British, but it's been used as a royal or national hymn in many other countries, to include, at various times, Sweden, several 19th century German kingdoms, Switzerland, and it remains the national anthem of Liechtenstein. In the United States, it's sung to the lyrics of America, commonly known as My Country 'Tis of Thee, which leads us to the discussion of the term country. Think of the words of that song or of another patriotic hymn, America the Beautiful. From these lyrics, we can derive that the term country refers to the land, a piece of geography which has a particular meaning for the people that live upon it. The United States is not the only country to make hymns about their country, the equivalent of a national anthem. Canada has O Canada, Britain has Land of Hope and Glory, and the German song Die Wacht am Rhein each sing about the geography of those places, and I'm sure there are many other examples. Now, a piece of geography only has relevance as a country because of the people that are attached to it in some special way. Now, this leads us to the term nation. This word derives from the Latin word natios, which refers to peoples born in a certain place, hence native born. Another Latin term used to describe a nation is gens, from which we get the term Gentile and genetic. The Greek term for nation is ethnos, from which we get the word ethnicity. So we are talking about people who share something that makes them distinct from other peoples. This could be similarities in language, culture, or heritage. It can also be applied to adopting this filial relationship. The Romans, for example, offered Roman citizenship, bringing someone into the Roman natios, but it was understood that one would act as a Roman according to their laws. In the medieval world, this could take the form of swearing an oath of allegiance to a clan. Traditionally, it's been understood that a member of a gens, ethnos, or natios remained subject to the jurisdiction of their nation, even when abroad. A well-known example of this is when Pontius Pilate learned that Jesus was from Galilee, and so sent him to Herod for judgment. So, country is the land. The nation is the people who live on that land, with some cultural attachment to that land and to the other people living on that land. The French philosophe Voltaire once sarcastically remarked that the Holy Roman Empire wasn't holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. He was wrong on all three counts, but he left something out. The full title was The Holy Roman Empire of the German Nation. This title proclaimed a concept of nationhood, the importance of the national identity of the Germanic peoples, and led to the idea that this people should be politically as well as culturally united. This leads to the next term, state. A state is a government which claims rights of sovereignty and jurisdiction, equal, under relevant law, to other states. The purpose of a state is the regulation and governance of people subject to it, or who it claims to represent in acts of governance. Usually, but not exclusively, this jurisdiction is exercised over territory within internationally recognized boundaries. There are some entities that claim and are recognized to have extraterritorial jurisdiction, and at least in one case, that state doesn't have any internationally recognized territory at all. These boundaries may change as the result of diplomatic agreement following war, plebiscite of the people, the gens or ethnos, residing on that territory, or other diplomatic initiatives. In each case, the boundaries are subject to international recognition. Since the Congress of Vienna ending the Napoleonic Wars, and particularly since the end of World War II, changing a state's boundaries by force majeure is considered a serious violation of international law. Before I conclude for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about a contemporary problem associated with the nexus of the nation, the country, and the state. That is, the idea of self-determination by the will of the people. Now, this idea was largely invented by Woodrow Wilson during the First World War. It's a concept that sounds nice in principle, but has rarely been acceptable in practice. Surprise? This is largely because it disrupts the notion of the sovereignty of states. If the international community truly believed in the idea that the ethnos of a country could determine their state affiliation, well then, the Confederate States of America would have been allowed to secede from the United States. Biafra and Kurdistan would be independent countries today. After the First World War, South Tyrol voted overwhelmingly to remain part of Austria, but it was given to Italy. Wilson's own Secretary of State remarked that the principle of self-determination, quote, will give rise to hopes that can never be fulfilled. The only time when state boundaries have changed in response to the will of the people of a geographical area is when that change was consistent with the will of the international order, and the previously sovereign government was unable to prevent that change. The guiding principle here is that states are recognized as sovereign within internationally recognized borders, with the understanding that states have a responsibility to protect and promote the equal rights of all of those within that state's jurisdiction, regardless of nationality or ethnic community. Ukraine's borders were recognized by the Soviet Union in 1954 and by the Russian Federation in 1994 and again in 1997, recognizing Ukraine as an equal and sovereign state. That Vladimir Putin has a different perception of the country of Ukraine, the Ukrainian people as a nation, and its status as a sovereign state must all be confronted if we are to be successful in achieving the just and sustainable peace Pope Leo is calling for.